Hello and welcome to the Growth Experts Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. You're in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to Funded Now What, the podcast where you hear from recently funded founders and me, Andrew Startups, the marketing guy. I am so thrilled today because we've got Rei Wang here, the founder and CPO of The Grand, which is a group coaching platform helping people at the transition between work and life. And we're going to unpack how they were able to raise, Rei, correct me if I'm wrong, $4.7 million towards the end of last year, I think.
Yeah, so that was our most recent raise, our seed round. In total, we've raised 7.1.
Amazing. And, it's no joke. It was a difficult time for founders, let alone a minority female founder. And I want to hear from you. Start off, tell us a little bit more what I didn't say in the intro. What is The Grand and why did you start it and who are you trying to help and all that great stuff?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Andrew. So to tell you a little bit about my story, my name is Rei. I've been really fascinated by community my entire life. A lot of that is because of the way that I was brought up. So I grew up in China. I was raised by my grandparents who were both teachers. They were both community gatherers. They brought people from, our neighborhood over all the time. And we always had people around sharing stories with each other. And I really felt like I grew up in a very supportive village. When I was a kid, then I moved around a lot. I moved from China to the UK to the States, lived in about 12 different cities, all before the age of 10. So
Wow.
personally, I was always trying to navigate these new environments, right? Learning new languages, going to new schools, trying to figure out how do I make friends, where do I belong? So that became a driving theme that really fueled me my whole life, and really what inspired me to start working and helping people find this sense of community, this sense of belonging. Professionally, then my career has been at the intersection of learning and product. And back in 2011, I was one of the first startups in New York that was really helping people pursue the work that they love and teaching them skills related to business, to design, to technology. It built out GA's first mobile product, first online product, really helped expand their education beyond the classroom and into the hands of people all over the world. And then after that, I got to San Francisco and I joined a VC firm out there called First Round Capital that was focused on seed stage investing. I specifically was in charge of a fund focused on students who are starting companies while still in school called Dorm Room Fund.
I saw that.
Fund, yeah, we had about 250 different companies. And I was charged with helping these companies grow and helping these founders learn from each other. I was like, oh man, how am I going to do that, right? I'm one person, we've got 250 companies. And I quickly realized that the best way to help all of the founders learn was not by telling them what to do. Founders don't like that. Most of us don't. And it was much more effective to create small group conversations, to bring people together who are navigating kind of a similar stage, give them a safe space where they could take off that kind of Silicon Valley posturing, right? That like I'm crushing all the time, everything's always going up and to the right, and give them permission to be more open, to be more vulnerable, and actually share what was keeping them up at night. And through those small group conversations, we really helped our founders unpack so many big challenges related to their work, but also to their life, right? Being a founder is so intertwined with your sense of personal identity. So giving them the space to be authentic and share those challenges really, really transformed their life. And about 4 years of doing this work, we heard founders say, this completely changed the relationship I have with my co-founder, the relationship I have with my team.
Wow.
And it also changed the relationship that I have with my spouse at home, right? I feel more confident. I feel more secure in being able to make decisions. I'm a better leader because of this group. So my co-founder Anita and I, who we were both at First Round, we took a step back one day where we're like, this is awesome that a lot of VC firms are now providing this type of community and support to their founders, but what about everyone else in the world, right? This was right at the start of 2019, pre-pandemic actually, but already loneliness was one of the biggest public health issues of our lifetime. There was a lot of research showing that for young people especially, we feel lonelier than we ever have before. And a big part of the reason is because our social systems have kind of disappeared, right? That sense of growing up in a village or being part of a church
Yeah.
community. We're now moving all the time and everything is fragmented. So a lot of people don't actually have a real place to go to talk about the things that actually matter.
Hmm.
And so much more transient. We spent about 50% of our adult lives now in transition, whether that's starting a new job, starting a new company, moving to a new city, going through a breakup, right? And during these moments of transition is when we need community and support the most. So we started to think about how can we actually solve for this? How can we help people feel more supported when they're navigating moments of transition? And that's where the idea of the brand was born.
Love it, definitely. And just for everybody out there, the URL is thegrand.world, right? First, I don't want to jump into the marketing stuff yet, but it's very rare that we have a company with anything but a .com. I've never seen a startup raise money with .world. Have you had any investors, advisors, mentors, coworkers yell at you for that yet? Or am I going to be the first person on this?
I'm curious what you have to say about our domain name. So the reason that we wanted to call it the Grand.World is because of that idea of you have arrived home, right? This is your place of belonging. You are now part of the Grand.World. You are a member of the space, right? So creating that sense of that belonging community is why we named it the Grand.World. I know it's probably not the best for SEO. You can give me some tips on that later.
You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, it depends on your user acquisition strategy, but one thing that people don't realize is anything besides a .com has a subconscious negative connotation with it to the user. So when we're going to talk about like there's a B2B side of this business, that could be something that's affecting that outreach and that growth on the B2B side, because you reach out to a chief people officer at Netflix and they're like, well, I'm not working with some .world startup. And they don't realize it's an unconscious bias, much like all the
Yeah.
other horrible unconscious biases out there. But it could have that negative effect. But I still love to see it, going against the grain, the .world. I love the name and the origin, and you honored your parents. That's really awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the product, because even me looking at the website, is it a platform? Is it a community? Is it a white labeled thing? Like, what do you do? Who do you work with? Is it for students? Tell me more about what exactly the Grand is.
Yeah, great question. So what we offer at the end of the day is a full-on coaching solution for people who are navigating transitional moments, as well as for companies and organizations who want to support their employees, who want to support their founders, who want to support their people, and really encourage them to grow both professionally and personally, right? So what that means is we take care of the entire experience. You come to us, you tell us a little bit about what is the most pressing challenge on your life right now. Is it that you're a new founder and you just started a company and you want to be in a peer group with other founders, right? Or maybe you're a new dad and you want to be in a space with other working parents who are also creators and who are navigating the intersection between your parenthood and building a business, right? Or maybe you're someone who has spent 25 years in corporate America and that doesn't really mean anything to you anymore. And you want to figure out what actually gives your life purpose and meaning. Whatever it is, we have a group for you. So what that means is we will curate a group of 6 to 8 other individuals who are going through a similar transition. And that group is guided by an executive coach. It's a 6-month long experience where every single session you're meeting every 2 weeks for 75 minutes. We've designed the entire curriculum and all of the content exercises to be interactive, to be able to foster vulnerability, utility, and connection. And those are kind of the 3 tenets of the experience, right? Vulnerability is important because we really believe that it's a superpower that leads to human connection. It leads to people feeling seen, heard, witnessed, and builds trust within the group. Utility is this isn't just theoretical learning. We really believe that the best way to learn is through other people's lived experiences.
Of course.
So when you can create a safe container for everyone to share, whether that's sharing leadership tips for, new senior VPs, or that's sharing new parenting tips, right, for new moms, the best way is that pure knowledge exchange. And then
Hmm.
connection at the end of the day is what we think life is all about. It is about building those relationships, right? And knowing that regardless of what happens, you can always call up your grand counsel, you can always call up your coach, and they're there and they've got your back.
Very, very cool. And I want to, you said you've got a group for everything. So if I want to be a part of a group for ADHD entrepreneurs who are recent husbands, I can put that together because that's what's going on in my life right now. When one person comes to you, it sounds amazing. And I've got some like product questions, which you're the right person to talk to in a little bit. But how do you go about finding those other people? Because I'm a coach. I do one-on-one coaching through my agency, GrowthExpertz, and I've been asked many times, "Oh, can you do a cheaper group coaching thing?" And the difficult part for me has been going to find the other people right away that can start at a certain time. How do you fight that?
Yeah, so that's where the marketing comes in, right? So, if you're coming to us and you say, "Hey, the main challenges for me right now is, having ADHD, being an entrepreneur, and also showing up as a partner," right? We might say, "Great, let's help you launch that group." So we'll go out to our community and say, "We're starting a group for neurotypical leaders," right? And if you want to join this group, come chat with us. And then from there, we might curate a subset that is most relevant to you. Or if you say actually want like a slightly more diversity of opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where it's maybe not just entrepreneurs, but anyone who's creative. That might be another subset of the group, right? So I think it's once you build a brand and a platform, you have this amazing ability to bring in folks from all
Mm-hmm.
different parts of the world and then connect them and curate them together.
Very cool. And before I ask like pricing related questions, going back to the product, I would imagine as chief product officer, there's some tech built into this. You have like a
Yeah,
mobile app, web dashboard, community chat. Like what kind of cool stuff have you built for this?
yeah, we've got it all. So, and everyone who's listening to the podcast is welcome to check it out. So, if you go to our website, thegrand.world, there on the top nav there, you can sign up for an account. We really believe in making coaching more accessible. As you probably know, since you're a coach yourself and you've worked with lots of founders, I'm sure we have coaches. Oftentimes, coaching can be, $500 plus an hour, right?
Yep,
Really expensive coaches. And not everyone can afford that, but everyone does need the support. So
totally.
we really believe in democratizing coaching. We have a product that is completely free.
Wow.
So world/sign up, right? You can go on there and you can get free coaching tools, the same ones that we use with NBA players and founders, right?
Wow.
All of that is made accessible to you. And when you do the different coaching exercises, you can actually unlock a free one-on-one coaching session with one of our executive coaches. So we really wanted to be offering a way that doesn't limit coaching to only people who can afford it, right? So that's
Amazing.
on one end of what we've created, all the way to kind of the more premium exclusive experience that we have too.
Let's talk about the premium experience. First of all, that is amazing. And, one thing I love about working with startups in the Bay and in San Francisco versus New York, no offense, and other places is companies and founders seem to be very focused on giving rather than taking. And you get so much more in return when you don't focus on that. Like as a startup, your job is to create as much value as possible, but it's very rare that someone's giving away one-on-one coaching with executive coaches. And I'm sure that's what your investors realize. Walk me through that premium experience. I'm not sure if I can afford it, but who's the ICP for that and what's the price point look like?
Yeah, so on the more premium side, the price goes up on a sliding scale depending on how senior you are, right? So if you are a C-suite executive and you're thinking through a career transition or becoming a working parent, right? We have a more premium offering for you. So you would be in a group with other C-suite executives and have a coach specifically, curated for you to navigate that transition. So for example, right now, we have a group of working moms that includes, folks from Meta and, VC firms and other really prestigious places that have a lot of hard time being able to kind of share openly with their peers, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
might not have that safe space at work, but they want a other group of executive moms and in high powerful positions who
Yeah.
get it. Yeah, that price point includes the group coaching, but it also includes one-on-one coaching. We call them deep dives for you to be able to go in and further examine some of the challenges that are coming up for you, right? And so that pricing varies. It's around $2,500 for 6 sessions, all the way
Wow,
up to maybe about 4,000, right? If you want to join for 12 or for the whole year. So we still on that end, I think is still pretty affordable in comparison
absolutely.
to
For
most expensive.
somebody at Meta, yeah, no, totally.
And
And
especially because you're not just getting one person's point of view, right? You're getting the coach plus the entire group. I think as a coach, you probably have heard this analogy that the best coaches are mirrors and they ask thoughtful questions
mhm,
and they reflect your experience back to you, right? And by looking at that mirror, you can better understand yourself. When we think about the value that we offer at the Grand, we like to use this analogy of a kaleidoscope and that you're getting a multidimensional kind of reflection back at you, right? By
mhm,
being in a peer group and by having a coach. So all of
yeah.
a sudden, you're able to see things through a new lens and have new points of view, new colors reflected and reflected back at you that can help you uncover your own blind spots and be able to grow and develop further.
Love it. And even, group coaching, which again, I have not been lucky enough to facilitate myself, but as a receiver, I've seen it, there's intangible benefits of just seeing other people going through the same things as you. And, I think that can fight depression, loneliness, as you mentioned, but also just realizing, we have the tendency to think nobody in the world out of 60 billion people have ever had these problems that I have. And
Yeah.
then you see 10 other people doing it and struggling with it. And you're like, oh, I can do this, And so I think there's the confidence. There's a lot of, I've read, both of my parents are cancer survivors, and there's a lot of literature out there that even group, not counseling, like hangouts
Mhm.
of even terminally ill cancer patients extend their life expectancy up to like
Oh,
38 or
yeah.
40% because
Yeah.
just like, that person's doing it. That gives me like the fire to do it. That's so cool. And I definitely think that's a way more attainable price point than I was expecting with the branding and like how badass you are. I was like, oh, this is going to be, way crazy. And then you mentioned people from Meta, and I was like, oh, it's going to be 20, 30,000 or something. But that's really cool. Awesome. Let's talk really quickly before we go into the marketing stuff about the fundraising. I guess you'd already raised a couple $1 million before. What did you do in between those rounds that, made you really say, 2023, the hardest year in memory to raise funding. We got to go out and do this again. Like, what kind of scale were you guys at? And, what was the impetus behind raising again?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of context, we raised our first pre-seed round in November of 2020, a fairly good time to raise,
Yeah.
things considered. And then we decided to raise our seed round at the start of 2023 last year.
Mhm.
And then we ended up closing in May of 2023 and then announced it in late summer, early fall. The big reason we wanted to raise was to really help us grow, right? So having come from venture, we had seen sort of a lot around what it's like to run an early stage startup. And so the big question that was on me and my co-founder Anita's mind was, can we validate the business model and can we find product market fit? I think one thing that we did well is we were very focused on the business model from day one.
Mhm.
Right. So even though we were small and we were still doing things, manually, we wanted to make sure that there was actually demand for what we was creating. So
That's good.
yeah, and from the very beginning, we had unit economics that would make sense and that would be at venture scale. So we were kind of focused on those numbers from the very beginning. And then all of a sudden, when the market changed in fall of 2022, went out to go raise in January 2023. We actually had been tracking that, right, for the entire 2.5 years. So it wasn't a big shock to us. Where I
Mhm.
think for some other founders that were maybe only focused on growth and hadn't really thought about a business model yet, it was a shock to be like, oh man, now I got to go figure out my business model, right? But for us, we knew that we had to have unit economics that made sense. We needed to make sure that, everything we were doing was financially sound and could actually be repeatable and scalable. And because we had been doing that for the past 2.5 years, when we went out to go raise in early 2023, we were able just to show investors our data and
Yeah.
our charts, and they could dig into our financials and see that this was a real business. That made it a lot easier to fundraise, even though the market was pretty challenging.
I hope everybody understands how valuable that is because tons of companies raising money in good times, maybe investors are taking crazier bets, but in down markets, they have to be able to sift through the BS or the riskier investments. And the more you can prove that your company is not a risky investment, this is the plan, this is the unit economics, this is the growth strategy, this is the team, and those question marks become removed and you actually sift up to the top of feasible investments for investors. So the down market actually even helped you because you pre-planned, being that less risky investment from the beginning. So I love that. That's excellent advice. Thank you. Be honest with me though. What percentage or how much do you think being an ex-VC helped you? I mean, I guess maybe be able to put yourself in their shoes and know what they're
Yeah.
looking for sure. But even like, how many people did you know from first round or from the dorm fund that put money in? Like,
Yeah,
that
I would say
help?
it definitely helped, right? I think in the early days of venture, especially when you're raising your pre-seed round or that friends and family angel round, it's all about who you know, right?
Right.
Beyond at that times, a lot of people don't even have a product out in market yet. So it's not even about product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about founder market fit. And is this the founder that I believe in and a founder that I want to invest in? And I think because Anita and I had both come from venture, so many founders, so many investors had come to experience the products and the programs and the events that we had put on the
Mm-hmm.
past, right? So they knew that our work was high quality. They knew that we were credible and we were thoughtful and very intentional in the way that we created experiences and designed them. And that made them want to invest in us. I think that definitely gave us an advantage. And it helped that we had a strong personal brand that was built around authenticity and trust.
Amazing. Well, I have like tons more questions about, the worst possible coaching client you've ever had and things like that. I love talking to that about or best and all these amazing stories I'm sure you got. But this is a marketing podcast. I want to dive into the marketing issues that you're comfortable to talk about, see if I can create some value for you because you've already dropped some super awesome golden nuggets for my audience. Ray, talk me through, I know that the brand is focused on individuals, and I think there's a whole suite of unique marketing channels for that. But you mentioned specifically some of those individuals come from companies. Are those like that dream meta customer is paid for by the company, or is that just their role? And you mentioned it. What does the B2B side of the business look like? Is this like a employee benefit? Have you gotten into that realm yet or not yet?
Yeah, great questions. Maybe I can take a step back and just tell you a little bit about how our business has evolved and when we introduced B2B, right? So as you mentioned earlier, when we first started off, we were all about the individuals and really kind of speaking to people at that human level. So all of our first customers were consumers that were paying out of pocket, signing up themselves. And as we started to grow, we started to think about, how can we start to scale this? What does that look like? Given that we had both worked in venture before and we had worked with founders, our first idea was, well, why don't we reach out to VCs and see if they want to buy the grant to support their founders,
Mm-hmm.
right? That seems like a natural kind of offering.
Right.
And so we reached out to all of the VCs that we knew and we told them about the grant and how this would benefit their founders, help them make better decisions, help them feel supported, but also help them create community within their portfolio, right? So then we had a bunch of investors signing up their founders, and that was kind of our first foray into working with organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And then those founders joined the grant and they were like, we love this. Can we start offering the grant to our team? Right. And we were like, great. Yes, we would absolutely love
Wow.
to work with your team. So that was how we started kind of moving from consumer to B2B. And at first, we didn't have kind of, sort of a strategic breakdown in place. It was all very organic. But as we started to grow and raise this new round, we had to start thinking about, okay, strategically, where do we want to invest in the business? And B2B, I think, is a better long-term investment and that
Mm-hmm.
you're able to grow faster, right?
Totally.
And so for a while, we were kind of 50-50, B2C, B2B. But as you probably know, doing anything 50-50
Doesn't
is,
get done.
is, yeah, is challenging, especially when you have a small team. We want to make our focus B2B. We think the majority of our
Good.
business, the 80%, is going to come from B2B.
Yep.
We still love consumer, and
Of
we
course.
always want to speak to our customer as real humans, right?
Mhm.
And we always want to put the person first because that's what our brand is all about.
Smart. And I always make the joke that it's easier for a company to spend 10 grand than it is for a person to spend $10, even if like the writing's on the wall and it's massively valuable for them. It's just tough. And companies are struggling to find important and valuable and rewarding things that they can invest in. And I'm sure you have data that shows there's massive ROI. So it's a much shorter sales cycle than it would be direct to the person. Actually, my wife has a B2B corporate wellness events company. It's the same thing. I mean, these big companies with distributed remote teams, there used to be like, the kombucha on tap in the office, but it's like, what perk can you offer anymore that's going to actually make transformative change for your top leadership and your employees that are growing within the company? So that's like awesome thing that you're doing. So with that, let's dive into how are you acquiring? I mean, you've maxed out your network. Let's imagine you've touched all those VCs. What kind of strategies are you doing and what are you not doing that I can give you some insight on to grow that B2B side of the business?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish I could like show you my whole funnel right now. We just mapped this out at an offsite meeting earlier this week,
Nice.
thinking about the different stages. One in the beginning, it's really about building trust and credibility, right? So we do a lot of lead gen workshops, coaching workshops that are completely free,
Mm-hmm.
targeted towards the chief people officers, the
Mm-hmm.
VPs of learning and talent, right? Who are running these large organizations and constantly thinking about employee engagement, retention, learning and development. So
Mm-hmm.
that has been kind of the first step for us. We've created a couple of flagship events called Leader as Coach, where we'll invite these people leaders to come and join. It's an hour long. They get to meet our coaches, they get a taste for what our content is like, and they get to
Mm-hmm.
see why it's so engaging. And
Okay.
then we, move them down the funnel.
Yeah.
And
Let me interrupt you there, and I apologize, but I want to
yeah,
unpack that a little bit. At the top of that funnel, you said you're just doing outreach. Are you doing outreach on LinkedIn? You're emailing people, you're partnering with other organizations to get access to their email list, and are you
yeah.
running ads? Are you doing all four of those things to drive people to come to that event?
So we've done a little bit of all the first three things you've mentioned. We haven't run ads yet. So
That's okay.
we've done LinkedIn outreach, we've done email outreach, we've partnered with other companies that are in a similar space. So for example, last fall we did a workshop with Gusto as one of our
Yeah.
partners. They
Nice.
invited a ton of folks on their side, right? It was a great partnership, and that
Yeah.
we were able to sort of grow our audience, meet
Yeah.
more like-minded folks. They were able to offer our coaching to their network, right?
So
So
cool.
a really good
Win-win.
example of of a great strategic partnership.
We call those JVs, joint venture like marketing
Yeah.
event campaigns. But so first piece of amazing value I'm going to give you is an ads hacking strategy, very low budget, even if you've raised millions of dollars. LinkedIn events. So when you do that
Mm,
event, you put up an event on LinkedIn. You should always do like the trifecta of Facebook events, LinkedIn events, and Eventbrite. And you put in the title. It should say, for leaders or for head of people or whatever. That way you're making sure that people are self-qualifying. But these are all search engines that people are discovering events on, and so you will
yeah.
get some organic traction where they'll discover it on their own. But the beauty is with that LinkedIn event landing page, most people don't know this, you can run very effective lead gen campaigns just to get people to subscribe to that event on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn tends to be very expensive for video ads, lead generation ads, but for event responses, it's pretty cheap, a couple dollars an event response, and you can hyper target to somebody's role, which is really what
Great.
you need.
Yeah.
So, you make sure that audience size is as low as possible. And hopefully no one from LinkedIn ads is listening to this, but all ad platforms are geared towards you automating a lot of stuff and putting the onus on them, and then it wastes a lot of money. So you really be strict about, nope, not audience expansion, no, not this, not this, no, not the LinkedIn ad network, only LinkedIn, only these roles. Even if you're nationwide, it should be under 100,000 probably audience. You can, do it in an event that's max within 2 weeks and ahead. If it goes longer than that, people forget, it gets stale.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, once they subscribe, LinkedIn is giving them push notifications. It's reminding them that the event is coming up. And you're not getting their email address unless they RSVP on Eventbrite, usually is the final thing that we make people do. That way they're getting email automations as well. But you still can see their profiles. You can, even after the event, can have a salesperson go in and click and DM all the people that attended. Doesn't take a long time. And that can have like, $500 cost, and you get, 200-300 more people to come to that event. I think that would be really big for you guys because it's so specific on the role targeting and the types and sizes of the company. So you can add all those parameters, even the industries, industries that tend to be more distributed or that have difficulties with, employees going through those transitions that you mentioned. So I think LinkedIn ads hacking is definitely something that you should start with. Other ad platforms, maybe, especially because you've got Alexis who invested in you. Nobody spends money on Reddit. And no offense, Alexis, if you listen to this, it's, I know he's not that involved anymore, although I heard they're about to IPO. It's another thing. But I do only when it's a super targeted subreddit. And if leaders, HR leaders, I'm not sure what the subreddit is, but it's really targeted and it's so cheap. It's like 20-30 cents a click. And it can just be join this free event. Like, I really believe in running ads to free events that start the funnel, because it's a lot different than swipe up to get this, blah, blah, blah. Like, I also really don't like running ads. It's a part of business, but I always make sure that we're focusing on organic first. But with where you guys are at now, at this level, to get to the scale that you want to go, it's really paid user acquisition at some point. So I love the events thing. That's great. And I think like letting people get a taste of what you do, it's like, they're just like, take my money after that. Like, the sales cycle is shortened so heavily. When I work with B2B companies, I try to tell them to do that. No, I don't want to give it away free. The more you give away free, the more you get back. And that's just the way it works with B2B. So I love that. With the LinkedIn outreach, are you doing that all manually, or are you using any automated outreach tools that I might be able to recommend?
Yeah, I think so. I don't run the go-to-market side of our business. That's Anita. That's on our team. I think right now it's all manually, so would love to hear your recs for
all right, this one's for Anita then. So about 5 years ago, LinkedIn automation tools popped up, and there was no parameters or shadow banning risks from LinkedIn. So now you have to be a little bit careful, but it's still totally ethical. It's totally fine, as long as you're focused on creating value. So we all get these outreach messages, like, a super long message that's like, my eyes just glare over when I see it. And so what I've found that's really successful is just asking a question. Like, hey, do you have team members that are struggling with XYZ right now? That's it. It doesn't say what you do. They always are going to be like, actually, are you looking for new benefits to offer in 2024 to like your top leadership? Those kind of things get a really good response, and nobody's doing that. The goal with automation is to make it sound like it's not automation. So people tend to write in the automation stuff they would never say naturally, and that's not going to get a response. So the first thing is making sure that it's a super organic sounding, valuable message. That's usually just a question. I don't actually like to put a call to action or anything that other experts say that you're supposed to include in the messaging. Even if it makes it heavy or lifting, it's the top of the funnel, the automated outreach, doing a certain number of connections a day, which I believe you get 100 connections per week now with these tools. So the tool that I'm using with I have a startup founder retreat that, it's DMing founders, asking them if they need help with XYZ, and then I'm organically talking after that. It's Dux Soup, DUX Soup. It's only like $45 a month. And what you do is you test it with Anita's profile or one person's profile. So Dux Soup is a really great tool because it works. I haven't had any issues with LinkedIn, and it's really affordable. And basically you just test with one, usually senior person in the company's profile. And then if it really works, the way to scale that up is just, using other team members' profiles. But since you have such a specific target, I mean, just Anita's profile or both of you, really the halo effect of that is that you're your organic audience grows and you become a
Yeah.
thought leader and super like well connected to all these HR leaders, a lot of times they do not respond to the messaging at all, but then through creating organic content on your LinkedIn, which you should be doing. And if you're not, that's a whole nother thing we can talk about. Then they end up, oh my God, Andrew, I saw this post that you did, or Ray, I saw this post that you did. I didn't even realize you were messaging me years ago. So those
Yeah.
connections tend to be really long-term valuable. You know, they start to know you and know the brand organically. And so I think LinkedIn automation tends to work better than email automation for that target. These
Yeah.
senior people at Meta and other big companies, they have email firewalls that don't even let like automation get through, and you tend to get
Right.
a less of a response. Whereas LinkedIn, they're just like on their phone, like being a social media user, and it does
Yeah.
work. We get really good responses from that. Not to be like this whole episode is all about promoting LinkedIn, but B2B, I mean, they've got it really
Yeah.
works really well. I mean, you've got the event funnel. The JV route is really good. Like definitely making a case study out of that thing that you did with Gusto and then doing outreach for that. You know, it's a different role in the company, the person that's in charge of that. It could be marketing director. You know, another thing is when you're doing that outreach, there's top down approach and bottoms up approach where CEO, C whatever, chief people officer, top down, you get less responses. But when they do respond, short sales cycle. Well, when we're
Right.
doing automation, we also want to try HR coordinator, HR manager, employee experiences manager, like not necessarily lower down the totem pole, but they have multiple levels they have to get approval from, but they tend to get more value out of suggesting these things to the team in the next meeting. And so our goal as marketers is to create value for people. So that message can create even more value for the person who brings it up to that chief people officer. And so a lot of times when we consult for companies, we find that they didn't think of that. They just go straight to the top. Unless it's the right time for them, you don't always get the best responses. Those people tend to be less active in social media too, because of their role and how many people they manage and their free time. Another strategy and recommendation, I think, is testing that bottoms up approach and reaching out to people that are parts of a larger organization or team on the HR and people side and seeing if that works. Sometimes it does. And also sometimes it can be a big time waster, like doing sales calls with those people and then not hearing anything for several months because they're not the decision maker. But to get to that next level of scale, it's, you know, paid user acquisition, you know, speaking to more people and testing other ICPs in the organizations. Last thing I think is really like on the PR side. Obviously, I know you got a ton of PR and public relations, earned media around the raise. Have you continued that? Are you working with a PR firm? Because like this is a meaty, sexy subject right now for
Yeah.
media related to companies and work. Are you doing that?
It's a great point. We're not right now, but we should. We had a great PR consultant who was freelance that we worked with for the raise, and she helped us with all those placements and Fortune and so on and
Nice.
so forth. So yeah, I think you're right, right? It's about continued thought leadership, staying top of mind. To do that, a great credible way is to be covered in reputable magazines and outlets.
Yeah. And it's less difficult for you and your company than most because you have a natural organic reason. You should have data by now that you can leverage for these stories. Like, I don't know if you could put together a report, obviously anonymize the data as much as possible, but you know, survey respondents from Meta and Netflix and other really big companies said that these are the things that are stressing them out the most, or
Right.
these are the things that people, you know, like one easy way besides raising the money, and that's the easiest way to get PR, is to put out a report of your own using data
Yeah.
that only you can have. And so I think that's a huge
Yeah.
golden egg opportunity for you because you can survey anyone who's taken a session with you, you know, offer to give one exec coaching session away for free to any survey respondent, and then aggregate this data into an infographic, and then boom, all of a sudden you've got a big PR opportunity. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, are you the face of the company, or both of you and Anita are?
We both,
Nice,
yeah.
nice. That's cool. But usually when we're doing like, you know, thought leadership marketing, we want to focus on one person in the organization, even though I guess it could be easier for travel schedules, just like one person that we can really build up as the keynote speaker in the space. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, Sherm and other like big conferences, you have a unique story and unique keynote, a unique reason to be on stage and to give this free advice to these leaders. And that stuff drives massive leads. I mean, even if you
Yeah.
have to, like, you might not get paid to go speak, it doesn't matter. But if you get a speaking gig that you shouldn't have to pay for, that comes from having a lot of value in your message. And so I'm thinking about that and starting with your own content, whether it's a podcast and you're interviewing HR leaders, which is, by the way, a whole nother great B2B strategy, building rapport like we're even doing right now, can lead with those bigger organizations specifically to, you know what, actually we should talk, you know. And so
Yeah.
that's good. But beyond that, the content is good because you send links to these speaker organizers. So if you have a junior marketer on the team or you work with an agency, you just say, you know, it takes you 2 hours. These are the 20, 30 conferences I want to get at. I don't want to
Yeah.
pay for sponsorship or exhibiting. We want to come as a speaker because we have this XYZ value to add. You'd be surprised. 10 to 15% of those are going to be like, okay, yeah, we'll do a panel and have you. And then being there, you know, networking and everything, huge opportunities for lead generation through that thought leadership. And it's, you know, it's just like content marketing. You do an event and then it lives out there, and or a podcast, and it should bring back leads forever. But also,
Yeah.
those links to those recordings or that YouTube video of that keynote, you work that into that LinkedIn or email automation, and it really does work. Like, you get sometimes better response from that than that question. So I mentioned the first message is a question. Second message is, hey, you might be interested in this keynote I just did about the top 10 things that are affecting leaders in 2024. Who's not
Right.
going to watch that? You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I was on this podcast. And then the fourth message is, would you be interested in being a part of this free event that we're doing for executives? You know, you're
Right.
almost just offering stuff. You're not
Yeah.
asking for anything. And so the response rate would be really good for that. And I think I'll stop there with the marketing advice. Do you have any questions for me based on the rant I just did for 20 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it. Thank you for all of the ideas. I think we've always sort of thought about like which channel is the best, right? Or which avenue should we go, or which idea should we pursue? But what I'm hearing from you is we should just try all of it.
I mean,
How would you kind of approach experimenting with all of the ideas you just
great
mentioned?
question. So I separate two things by short-term and long-term tests,
Yeah.
basically. First, the real filter in the beginning with like bootstrap companies is, what do we have the resources to execute and test, whether it's financial or team, but you have all of that. And so it's really like, what is the perceived value of these tests? And let's prioritize based on that. Like, for
Right.
instance, if you already know that the event stuff is working, then that's the first thing you should do is
Yeah.
10x those events with the stuff
Yeah.
that I mentioned. And then the other things are more like the PR stuff is very long term. You know,
Yeah.
it's a slog, and it takes a long time. And you might only get 1 or 2 wins in even like the first year. It's going to be faster for you guys because you're not starting at like square zero. But, you know, when I'm working with a bootstrap company that doesn't have a lot of PR out there, it takes a long time to prove that thought leadership. So that's a long-term thing. Now, the brand, they Google it when you reach out, you know, they see that you've been covered. But it starts with looking at Google alerts every morning and seeing, oh, these are the people writing about things to our target audience. Oh, let's click on that and get the author's email. Let's write them an email. Like, you can do it passively throughout the day, or you can build a list and then send a blast when you're launching a new feature or when you have an
Yeah.
amazing new case study or other newsworthy thing. And so I think, like, I would do the short-term high value things first, which doubling down on the events with more
Right.
promotion, and then go do the other stuff after that.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Tell me about some more of the tools. So I would
Give me
even more
more.
practical and just,
Ray, we're
send
almost
this
done
over
on the hour. Okay. So even though it's B2B, you know, HR and these people teams, it's a female dominated space, which I love, and even minority female dominated, which is, you know, unique in the tech and, you know, high tech space. I think, you know, definitely making sure that you're leveraging that, and, you know, you're doing things with, you know, those JVs with like female focused communities and things like that. You're lucky enough to be in a space where you can do that, and it makes a lot of sense. So, you know, you create a lot of amazing representation without even knowing about it, just by promoting yourself and what you do to those spaces. And like I was mentioning, my wife is in the corporate wellness space. She doesn't have a platform, but similar, she does group coaching on Zoom for wellness. She's like 75 different experts, no tech. She's a minority female. And I see a lot of companies like, 2 similar proposals, I'm going with this person, because they get the opportunity to use their power for good, for a conscious bias in the right way. And so I think that's one thing. Tools wise, because of that, that's where I was going originally. You know, I think that if you're not doing a ton of work on social media, you're leaving money on the table. And that can usually be difficult for companies because, and I haven't looked at your social media, so stop me now if you're like, no, we crush it, but we don't want to be on camera. We don't know what we would talk about. And so we don't know how we would create value. And so the first thing is creating a strategy that leverages what you already have. You have these amazing customers that aren't scared to be on video, that are having transformative experiences and aha moments left and right. And you can incentivize that without having to pay money. It can be, we'll give you a week for free, or a one-on-one coaching session with somebody, or my wife often at my request gives discounts to really core logo clients in exchange for video testimonials. He works with Netflix, Meta, Cisco, Dell, Microsoft, and they're not all into it often because they're like, we don't need a discount. Like, we don't want to be on video. But when they ask for it, which they do, even when they're like $1 trillion company or whatever, then you can slide in with that. Oh, well, I just talked to our marketing director, even if you don't have one, and we're able to give you that discount in exchange for a video testimonial about this, that, and this, or bake it into the automation for a group coaching thing. And when it ends, here's the ways that you can help the brand. Here's a referral link. Here's so getting that content and getting that into social is one part, but you don't want to be overly salesy. But like, seriously, like, I looked for a long time at your website and I did not understand all of the things that you're telling me now. And that is usually when people rush to social media to understand more about a business. So if your strategy is 25% talking about the brand, 25% case studies and testimonials, and then the other 50% is just like statistics about burnout and these transitions and these things that people are going to be interested in, share. Pretty easy. All that content's out there on the internet. And the last thing about that is there's a couple of tools that I really love for just scheduling the social media content across all channels. So, you don't have to take a ton of time. One is called later.com. Most people know about it. People on my team have been shouting at me to use socialchamp.io. So, when you don't use these scheduling tools, you just end up focusing on the social media channel that you love the most, like LinkedIn. Knows where ROI is going to be. You can take that content, put it on Twitter as well, grow a following there with very little effort. At the same time, post anything image related also on Pinterest, female-dominated social network, similar age demographic as your customers, and Google recognizes it. Even though you're not going to get any SEO with the .world URL, it's important to have links.
Yeah.
Do you own thegrandworld.com?
We don't. We should go after it.
No, it's too long. At this point, having a 3-word URL is crazy. Probably thegrand.com is probably like $100,000 if it's even available. It's probably not. I'm going to be honest. I bet you $100 it's a tower in Miami, like an apartment in Miami. That's what it sounds like. So it's probably taken, but no, like the Grand Coaching, the Grand Growth, the Grand Team, use thegrand.com, like the Grand app, get the Grand, use the Grand, whatever, like that's .com. That's my last tip. Definitely buy all those domains. And then if you want me to come and talk to you and Anita next time I'm back in San Francisco, I'm traveling right now, I'm happy to do that. But I think it would be easier to close those B2B clients if you were a .com, because they have to go to Google, see, oh my God, they've worked with all these companies. People don't recognize what their subconscious biases are. And I think there's a bias against a .world sounds like not a company doing all these amazing things that you're doing. So I'm not hating. I'm so proud of everything that you've achieved. Keep rocking it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Rei Wang. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you for all the tactical advice and feedback. I love it. And we're definitely going to apply it.
Awesome. Sounds good.
That has been another episode of the Growth Experts Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other startup founders and entrepreneurs and business owners in your network. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.